sometimes, the truth doesn't just cost you your job, it makes an entire empire crumble. When I spoke the words no one dared utter in that sealed boardroom, I didn't just lose my position. I lost faith in the person I once thought was a leader. But that collapse opened a path to revenge and took with it the very people the company never saw coming. They say honesty is the best policy, but they never tell you it's also the most dangerous weapon. My name is Emma Carter, and at 32, I thought I'd finally made it. Living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in Denver's Capitol Hill neighborhood, I was far from wealthy, but I'd clawed my way up from waiting tables to landing a senior account manager position at Brightline Strategies, one of Colorado's most prestigious marketing firms. Growing up, my parents worked double shifts at the meatpacking plant just to keep the lights on. I watched my mother's hands crack and bleed from the cold warehouse air, watched my father's back bend under the weight of endless hours. They'd always told me education was my ticket out, and I believed them. Student loans, night classes, unpaid internships. I did it all. Every rejection letter, every "you're not quite what we're looking for" felt like a punch to the gut. But I kept going. When I finally walked through Brightline's glass doors 5 years ago, carrying my discount store blazer and knockoff designer bag, I felt like I'd crossed into another world. The office sprawled across the entire 23rd floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the Rocky Mountains. Everyone spoke in crisp, confident tones about metrics and ROI, wielding iPads like weapons of corporate warfare. Gregory Hale hired me personally. I'll never forget that first meeting, him sitting behind his massive oak desk, silver hair perfectly styled, Armani suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. He had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room who mattered, leaning forward when you spoke, nodding thoughtfully. "Emma," he'd said, "I see hunger in you. Real hunger. Not the kind these trust fund kids have, playing at ambition. You've got the kind that comes from knowing what it's like to have nothing." He was right. I was hungry. Hungry enough to work 60-hour weeks without complaint. Hungry enough to study our clients' businesses until I knew them better than they knew themselves. Within 2 years, I was handling some of our biggest accounts, and Gregory would parade me around client dinners like his prized protege. "Emma came from nothing," he'd say with that practiced smile. "And look at her now. That's the Brightline difference. We recognize real talent." But behind closed doors, Gregory was different. The warmth would drain from his eyes the moment clients left the room. He'd dissect every meeting with surgical precision, finding fault even in successes. That pause before you answered their budget question. He'd say, 3 seconds too long, makes us look uncertain. Or, stop mentioning your background. Nobody cares where you came from, only what you can do for them now. The thing about Gregory was that he understood people, not in an empathetic way, but like a mechanic understands an engine. He knew exactly which lever to pull, which button to push. With me, it was the fear of sliding backward, of ending up back in that plant with my parents. He'd drop subtle reminders about how replaceable everyone was, how 100 hungry kids were graduating from business school every spring, ready to take our spots. My apartment might have been small, but it was mine. Every month when I paid rent, when I sent money to help my parents with their medical bills, when I bought actual fresh vegetables instead of ramen, I felt like I was winning. The stress headaches, the anxiety medication prescribed by my doctor, the fact that I hadn't taken a real vacation in 3 years, those were just the cost of success, right? I believed in Brightline. More importantly, I believed in the work we did. We helped small businesses find their voice, helped nonprofits reach donors, helped startups tell their stories. At least, that's what I told myself during those late nights. Eyes burning from staring at screens, surviving on coffee and whatever sad desk salad I'd grabbed from the shop downstairs. The younger employees looked at me with a mixture of admiration and pity. They saw someone who'd made it, but at what cost? I overheard one of the interns once say, "Emma's like a warning and an inspiration at the same time." They weren't wrong, but I was good at my job. Really good. My clients trusted me because I never promised what I couldn't deliver. When everyone else was spinning fairy tales about viral campaigns and overnight success, I dealt in reality. This will take time, I'd tell them. But if we do it right, it will last. Gregory always said my honesty was both my strength and my weakness. I just never imagined it would become my downfall. The first crack in my faith appeared on a Thursday morning in March. I'd arrived early, as usual, to prepare for a quarterly review with Meridian Tech, our biggest client worth nearly 40% of Brightline's revenue. The office was still empty except for the cleaning crew when I noticed Gregory's door was ajar, his voice drifting through the gap. The numbers need to show 23% growth, he was saying. I don't care how you massage them, just make it happen. I froze outside, listening to our CFO, Marcus, respond nervously. Greg, the actual growth is barely 9%. If Meridian audits, they won't. They never do. They just want to show their board that their marketing investment is paying off. We're simply helping them tell the story they need to tell. My stomach turned. I backed away quietly, but the conversation haunted me through the morning meetings. When we presented to Meridian that afternoon, I watched Gregory smoothly deliver the inflated figures, his voice confident, his smile never wavering. The clients nodded appreciatively, congratulating themselves on their smart investment. Over the next few weeks, I noticed more discrepancies. Campaign metrics that didn't add up, engagement rates that seemed impossibly high, conversion statistics that defied industry standards. Every time I tried to verify the data, I hit walls. That's above your pay grade, Emma, Marcus would say. Or from Gregory's assistant, Mr. Hale handles those reports personally. The breaking point came during a strategy session for launching Meridian's new product line. Gregory was pushing for promises we couldn't keep, guaranteed viral reach, trending hashtags, influence we simply didn't have. We should be conservative with our projections, I said, my voice cutting through his presentation. The room went silent. 8 pairs of eyes turned to me. If we promise these numbers and don't deliver, we always deliver, Gregory interrupted, his tone sharp as glass. Don't we, Emma? We deliver realistic results. This, I gestured at the screen, is fantasy. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Gregory's jaw tightened, that practiced smile becoming something predatory. Perhaps we should discuss your concerns privately. The meeting continued without me. I sat in my cubicle, hands shaking slightly as I refreshed my email, waiting for the summons. It came an hour later. Gregory's office felt smaller that day, the mountain view somehow oppressive rather than inspiring. He didn't invite me to sit. Do you know what your problem is? He began, voice deceptively calm. You think honesty is a virtue, but honesty without context is just naivety. Our clients don't pay us to tell them what they can't achieve. They pay us to make them believe in what's possible. They pay us to grow their business, not to lie. Lie? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. We're creating confidence. Confidence becomes investment. Investment becomes growth. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's fraud. The word hung between us like a loaded gun. Gregory stood slowly, walked around his desk until he was uncomfortably close. I could smell his expensive cologne, see the tiny blood vessel that pulsed in his temple when he was angry. This company doesn't need moral crusaders, he said quietly. It needs people who understand how the game is played. I thought you were smarter than this, Emma. I thought you understood that your precious honesty is a luxury people like us can't afford. People like us. People who came from nothing, who had to fight for every scrap. His voice softened, almost paternal. Don't throw away everything you've built for some misguided principle. Your parents are counting on you, aren't they? Medical bills don't pay themselves. The threat was subtle, but clear. I felt my throat constrict. Are you threatening me? I'm educating you. This firm operates on trust, Not the client's trust in us, but our trust in each other. If you can't be trusted to support the team. He let the sentence hang. I left his office feeling hollow. Over the next days, I was systematically excluded from key meetings. My emails to clients were mysteriously delayed. Projects I'd led for years were quietly reassigned. The whispers followed me through the halls. Emma's lost it. She's not a team player. Gregory's looking for her replacement. Sarah, one of the few colleagues I considered a friend, pulled me aside by the coffee machine. Just apologize, she whispered. Play the game. It's not worth losing everything. But every time I looked at the Meridian reports, at those inflated numbers bearing my department's stamp of approval, I felt physically sick. This wasn't what I'd worked so hard for. This wasn't who I wanted to be. The isolation was the worst part. Lunch invitations dried up. My input in meetings was politely acknowledged, then ignored. I became a ghost in the office I'd once considered home. Invisible, except when Gregory needed someone to blame for a delayed project or a client's minor complaint. I started documenting everything: screenshots, emails, recorded conversations when legal. Not sure what I'd do with it all, but feeling like I needed proof that I wasn't crazy, that this was really happening. Late at night, reviewing the evidence in my apartment, I realized the corruption ran deeper than I'd imagined. This wasn't just about one client or one set of numbers. It was systematic, built into Brightline's very foundation. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. 2 weeks after our confrontation, Gregory suddenly seemed to soften. He included me in a critical presentation for Meridian's board, even praised my attention to detail in front of the team. Emma will be leading the presentation, he announced, that practice smile back in place. She knows the account better than anyone. I should have trusted my gut when he handed me the presentation deck just 30 minutes before the meeting. Minor updates, he said casually. Nothing you can't handle. The Meridian boardroom was intimidating. 12 executives around a polished table, their expectations as high as the floor number. I began confidently, walking through the slides I'd rehearsed a dozen times. Then I reached slide 15, and my blood turned to ice. The numbers were wrong, not just inflated, blatantly, obviously fabricated, claims that our campaign had generated 50 million impressions when the real number was barely 5 million. ROI percentages that defied basic math. And at the bottom of each slide, in small print, prepared by Emma Carter, Senior Account Manager. These numbers seem aggressive. Meridian's CEO, Patricia Stern, interrupted, her eyes narrowing. Can you walk us through the methodology? I stood there, mouth dry, watching my career crumble in real time. I could expose Gregory right then, tell them about the manipulation, but I had no proof with me. It would be my word against his, and he'd made sure my name was on every fraudulent claim. There seems to be an error in the deck, I managed. These aren't the figures I prepared. The room erupted. Patricia's face flushed red. Are you saying you presented us with false information? Gregory stood smoothly, his face a mask of concern. I apologize for this confusion. Emma has been under considerable stress lately. Perhaps we should reschedule. Stress? I turned to him, fury overriding caution. You changed these slides. You. Emma. His voice was sharp, authoritative. Please don't make this worse. The Meridian executives were already gathering their things, disgust written across their faces. Patricia stopped at the door, looking directly at Gregory. We expect an explanation, and a new account manager, someone who can be trusted with accurate data. The walk back to Brightline's office was the longest of my life. Gregory stayed silent until we were in the elevator, then spoke without looking at me. Clear out your desk. Security will escort you out in an hour. You set me up. You set yourself up the moment you forgot who signs your paychecks. The firing was ruthlessly efficient. HR presented me with a termination letter citing gross incompetence and violation of client trust. The NDA I'd signed when I joined prevented me from disparaging the company publicly. My computer access was revoked before I even reached my desk. As I packed my things, a pathetic collection of personal items that fit in a single box. My colleagues avoided eye contact. Sarah wouldn't even look up from her screen. Only James, a junior analyst, had the courage to whisper, "I'm sorry," as I passed. The security guard, an older man named Carl, who I'd chatted with every morning for 5 years, couldn't meet my eyes as he walked me out. "I'm sorry, Ms. Carter," he mumbled at the door. "For what it's worth, most of us know this ain't right." Standing on the sidewalk, holding my box of belongings, I watched the building that had been my second home become a monument to my failure. 5 years of 60-hour weeks, of sacrificed weekends, of proving myself over and over, gone in a single morning. The rumors spread fast. By evening, my phone was buzzing with messages from industry contacts, most fishing for gossip. The narrative was already set. Emma Carter had cracked under pressure, presented false data to a major client, and had been fired for incompetence. In the small world of Denver marketing, I was radioactive. My parents called that night. Word had somehow reached them. "Honey, what happened?" my mother asked. Worry thick in her voice. I couldn't bring myself to explain that doing the right thing had cost me everything. But then, late that evening, something unexpected happened. My personal email began filling with messages, not from colleagues, but from clients. Former clients, current clients, people I'd worked with over the years. "Emma, I heard about what happened. I don't believe a word of it. Call me. David, Riverstone Brewing." "That's not the Emma I know. If you ever go independent, we'd follow you." "Lisa, Mountain Peak Nonprofit." "Gregory Hale is a snake. Everyone knows it. Don't let him win." Anonymous. The last message that night came from an encrypted email address. The attachment was a single document. Internal Brightline emails showing systematic fraud across multiple accounts. The sender wrote only, "You're not alone. Many of us have been collecting evidence. Use this wisely." Sitting in my dark apartment, laptop screen illuminating my face, I realized something. Gregory had won this battle by making me look like a liar. But in doing so, he'd made a crucial mistake. He'd given me nothing left to lose. The first week after the firing, I couldn't get out of bed. The humiliation felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. My savings would last maybe 3 months if I was careful. The student loans wouldn't wait. My parents' medical bills wouldn't pause. I sent out resumes, but the responses were uniform. Positions had been filled, they'd keep me on file. Best of luck. I knew Gregory had poisoned the well. In Denver's tight-knit marketing community, his word carried weight. Who would hire someone who'd allegedly fabricated data for a major client? By week 2, despair turned to anger. I found myself up at 3 a.m., laptop open, staring at the anonymous email with the Brightline evidence, names, dates, specific instances of fraud across 17 different accounts. Whoever sent this had been watching, documenting, waiting. But for what? The turning point came unexpectedly. David from Riverstone Brewing called, insisting on coffee. We met at a small shop in 5 Points, far from Brightline's territory. "I've been with Brightline for 3 years," he said, leaning across the worn wooden table. "And something never sat right. The numbers were too good, you know? Every other agency shows realistic growth. Brightline promises miracles and somehow delivers them. On paper. David, when you started handling our account, things changed. Suddenly the reports made sense. Modest growth, but real growth. Then Gregory took over the reporting again. And we're magically viral every quarter." He slid a folder across the table. "I had my nephew, MIT grad, data analyst, review everything. It's smoke and mirrors. Emma, why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm pulling our account from Brightline, and I want to know if you're planning to do something about what they did to you." That night, I sat at my small dining table, the one I'd bought secondhand when I first got the Brightline job, and made a decision. If Gregory had taught me anything, it was that perception was reality in this business. He'd destroyed my reputation with lies. Maybe I could rebuild it with truth. The idea came together slowly. What if I started my own consultancy? Not to compete with Brightline directly, I didn't have the resources for that. But to offer something they couldn't: radical transparency, every metric verified, every claim backed by real data, every client given access to raw analytics. True North Consulting. The name came to me at dawn, after a sleepless night of planning, a promise of direction based on honest navigation, not Gregory's smoke and mirrors. I mapped it out meticulously. I couldn't afford an office, but I could work from home. I couldn't afford advertising, but I could reach out personally to every client I'd ever worked with. I couldn't match Brightline's resources, but I could offer something they'd systematically destroyed: trust. My laptop screen glowed with spreadsheets, business plans, financial projections. Real ones, conservative ones. The kind that wouldn't excite investors but might appeal to businesses tired of being lied to. The anonymous source sent another email. Heard you're planning something. 12 current Brightline clients are unhappy with recent revelations about data integrity. They just don't know they have options yet. I spent the next week crafting my approach. No aggressive poaching. That could lead to legal trouble. But if I happened to reach out to former clients, people I'd worked with personally, to let them know about my new venture, that was just networking. The first call was terrifying. Lisa from Mountain Peak Nonprofit listened quietly as I explained my new consultancy's philosophy. "Emma," she said finally, "do you know how refreshing it is to hear someone in marketing say, 'I don't know, and that might not work? When can we meet?'" Not everyone was receptive. Some hung up the moment they heard my name. Others listened politely, then declined. But enough were interested. Enough remembered the work we'd done together before Gregory's influence poisoned it. I incorporated True North on a Tuesday morning, using legal Zoom because I couldn't afford a lawyer. The business license cost nearly a quarter of my remaining savings, but holding that piece of paper felt like holding a weapon. Sarah texted me that night, the first contact from any former colleague. "Heard you're starting something. Gregory is asking questions. Be careful." But careful was for people with something to lose. I'd already lost my job, my professional reputation, my stability. What I'd gained in return was clarity. Gregory had built an empire on lies, making him vulnerable to the one thing he couldn't spin or manipulate: the truth. I looked around my cramped apartment, at the card table that served as my desk, at the secondhand printer I'd bought off Craigslist, at the wall where I'd taped up my business plan. It wasn't much. But every revolution starts small. Gregory thought he'd destroyed me by firing me for honesty. He couldn't have known he was actually setting me free. Free from his toxic culture. Free from the constant moral compromises. Free to build something that wouldn't make my stomach turn every morning. Most importantly, he'd given me the perfect origin story. Every potential client would ask why I left Brightline. And I'd tell them the truth. I was fired for refusing to lie. In a world drowning in marketing spin, that was becoming my strongest selling point. The war hadn't started yet, but I was finally ready to fight back. The first True North meeting was in a Starbucks on 17th Street. Lisa from Mountain Peak Nonprofit arrived early, found me hunched over my laptop in the corner, trying to look professional despite the chaos of the morning coffee rush. "This is your office?" she asked, not unkindly. "For now. I believe in keeping overhead low so I can pass savings to clients." I pulled out a simple folder. No fancy binding, no glossy presentations. "Everything I'm showing you is real. Raw data. Actual case studies from my past work. Realistic projections. If something seems too good to be true, question it." She flipped through the papers, eyebrows rising. "You're actually showing me examples where campaigns didn't work? And explaining why and what we'd do differently. Lisa, I'm done pretending marketing is magic. It's work, experimentation, and honest communication. Sometimes things fail. The key is learning from it. Brightline promised us 30% donor growth this year. That's unrealistic, and you know it. I can offer you maybe 8 to 10%, but it'll be real growth. Donors who actually engage, not inflated email lists full of dead addresses. She signed on the spot. Word traveled quietly through Denver's nonprofit network. These weren't the big corporate accounts that made headlines, but they were steady, meaningful work. Each meeting followed the same pattern: initial skepticism, then surprise at my transparency, then relief that someone was finally being straight with them. David from Riverstone Brewing became my second client, but with a twist. I want you to audit what Brightline did for us. Every campaign, every metric. I need to know what was real and what wasn't. The audit was damning. Of the supposed 20,000 social media engagements Brightline claimed, fewer than 3,000 were from real accounts. The viral campaign that allegedly reached 2 million people had actually reached maybe 50,000. David wasn't just angry. He was considering legal action. Don't, I advised. Not yet. Let me rebuild your real numbers first, show you what authentic growth looks like, then decide. My anonymous source kept feeding me information: internal memos showing Gregory instructing staff to optimize data, client complaints that were buried, even recordings of meetings where fabrication was discussed openly. I stored everything, building a careful database of evidence. 3 weeks into True North's existence, I got my first corporate inquiry: Meridian Tech, the client whose board meeting had been my downfall. Patricia Stern herself called. Ms. Carter, I've been hearing interesting things about your new venture. My heart hammered. Ms. Stern, We've terminated our contract with Brightline. The irregularities you mentioned? We had our internal team investigate. Gregory Hale fed us 18 months of manipulated data. We're exploring our legal options. I'm sorry that happened to you. Are you? Because from what I'm hearing, you tried to warn us. We should have listened. A pause. We're not ready to commit to a new agency yet, but when we are, expect a call. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. 3 Brightline employees, junior analysts who'd been forced to falsify reports, reached out independently. They were still inside, miserable but trapped by non-competes and financial obligations. They became my eyes inside Gregory's operation. He's panicking, one told me over encrypted message. 4 more clients are asking questions. He's called 3 emergency meetings this week. I crafted my approach carefully. No direct solicitation of Brightline clients, that would violate legal boundaries. But when those clients happened to search for alternatives and found True North's simple website, with its promise of marketing without manipulation, they reached out themselves. The coffee shop meetings multiplied. My dining table disappeared under contracts and proposals. I hired a virtual assistant, a single mom working from home, just someone to handle scheduling and basic admin. Every dollar spent was agony, but necessary. Then Gregory made his first real mistake. He sent a cease and desist letter, claiming I was violating my NDA by soliciting Brightline clients. But the letter went beyond legal threats. He'd CC'd several major clients, trying to paint me as a vindictive former employee. It backfired spectacularly. Clients who hadn't even considered leaving Brightline suddenly wondered why Gregory was so threatened. Why attack a tiny consultancy unless it represented a real danger to his house of cards? My response was simple. I posted the letter on LinkedIn, along with my reply. I've received legal threats from my former employer for starting an honest consultancy. I haven't solicited any Brightline clients. I've simply offered an alternative: verified metrics, transparent pricing, and the radical idea that marketing agencies should tell the truth. If that threatens Brightline's business model, perhaps they should examine why. The post went viral in Denver marketing circles. Comments poured in, some calling me bitter, but many sharing their own stories of agency manipulation. Former Brightline employees emerged from the shadows, adding their experiences. Sarah called that night, whispering, "Emma, he's losing it," screaming at staff, threatening to sue everyone. 3 account managers just quit. He knows you have something on him. He's trying to figure out what. I looked at my wall of evidence, printed emails, reports, recordings, my ammunition against Gregory's empire, but I wasn't ready to use it yet. Let him sweat, Let him wonder. Let him make more mistakes. 6 weeks after being fired in disgrace, True North had 7 clients and enough revenue to cover my basic expenses. It wasn't revenge yet, not even close, but it was a foundation. And unlike Gregory's empire, mine was built on solid ground. Gregory's counterattack came at 2 a.m. on a Thursday. My phone erupted with notifications, emails, texts, calls from clients. Someone had sent an anonymous email blast to every True North client, claiming I'd been fired from Brightline for mental instability and substance abuse. Attached were doctored performance reviews and a fabricated police report. The violation felt physical. I sat on my bedroom floor, reading message after message. Some clients asking if it was true, others pulling back from scheduled meetings. Lisa from Mountain Peak called immediately. Emma, this is obviously bullshit, but you need to respond fast. By dawn, I'd lost 2 clients. The damage was spreading through social media, where anonymous accounts shared the allegations with Denver marketing groups. Unstable, dangerous, manipulative. Each word carefully chosen to destroy what little credibility I'd rebuilt. But Gregory had overplayed his hand. The police report he'd fabricated had a case number, one that actually belonged to a traffic incident from 2019. David from Riverstone, still furious about Brightline's deception, had his lawyer verify it within hours. This is criminal defamation, his lawyer told me over the phone. We can prove it's fake. You could destroy him with this. Instead, I chose a different path. I recorded a simple video from my apartment, no filters, no script, just me at my dining table with my laptop. My name is Emma Carter. 6 weeks ago, I was fired from Brightline Strategies for questioning inflated client metrics. Today, I woke up to fabricated police reports and false allegations about my character. I could respond with lawyers and lawsuits, but instead, I'm going to do something Gregory Hale never would, tell the truth. I laid out everything. The falsified Meridian presentation, the pattern of data manipulation. I didn't share the evidence my anonymous sources had provided, not yet, but I gave enough specifics that any client could verify for themselves. Check your metrics, I said directly to the camera. Really check them. Compare what Brightline tells you against your actual sales, your real engagement. Ask for raw data access. If they refuse, ask yourself why. The video went live on every platform. Within an hour, it had been shared hundreds of times. Comments flooded in from other agencies, freelancers, former Brightline employees. The dam was breaking. Gregory's response was swift and vicious. A formal lawsuit for defamation, demanding $2 million in damages. He held a press conference, standing in Brightline's gleaming lobby, painting himself as a victim of a disgruntled former employee. But his polished exterior was cracking. His hands shook slightly. That telltale blood vessel pulsed in his temple. Then my anonymous sources struck. Internal Brightline emails began appearing on an industry whistleblower site. Not all at once. That would be too obvious. Just a steady drip of evidence. An email here showing Gregory instructing staff to enhance numbers. A memo there about hiding client complaints. Each revelation perfectly timed to counter Gregory's public statements. The harassment escalated. My parents received calls claiming I was in legal trouble and needed bail money. My apartment building got complaints about noise I wasn't making. Someone called in a false welfare check, sending police to my door at midnight. My car tires were slashed twice in 1 week. Stop this, Sarah texted one night. He's beyond reason. The whole office is terrified. Just back down and it'll end. But backing down wasn't an option anymore. Each attack proved how desperate Gregory had become, and desperate people make fatal mistakes. The mistake came when Gregory tried to poach my biggest client, David from Riverstone. He offered them free services for 6 months, promising to undo the damage I'd caused. But David recorded the entire meeting, including Gregory admitting to creating the false police report to protect Brightline's reputation. Colorado is a one-party consent state for recordings. David's evidence was completely legal. We didn't release it immediately. Instead, David's lawyer sent it to Gregory with a simple message. Cease all harassment of Emma Carter and True North Consulting, or this recording goes to the district attorney. The harassment stopped overnight, but the damage to Gregory's reputation had metastasized beyond his control. Clients were fleeing Brightline in droves. 3 senior managers resigned in a single week. The board called emergency meetings. I kept working. Every client who left Brightline and came to True North got the same treatment. Honest assessments, realistic goals, transparent reporting, no magic, no manipulation, just solid work. My dining table office expanded to include a rented desk at a co-working space. I hired my first full-time employee, James, the junior analyst who'd whispered, "Sorry," as I was escorted out of Brightline. "Why?" I asked when he applied. "Because I got into marketing to help businesses grow, not to lie to them. What Gregory's doing isn't marketing, it's fraud, and everyone knows it now. Thanks to you." 6 months after my firing, True North had 18 clients and 4 employees. We were tiny compared to Brightline's operation, but we were growing with something they'd lost: trust. Gregory's final desperate move was a buyout offer. He showed up at my apartment on a Sunday evening, looking haggard. The silver hair was unkempt, the expensive suit wrinkled. "Name your price," he said without preamble. "I'll buy True North. You sign a complete NDA, this all goes away." "There's no price, Gregory." "Everyone has a price. 500,000, a million." I looked at the man who'd once seemed so powerful, who'd controlled my career with a word, who'd tried to destroy me for telling the truth. He looked small now, diminished. "You still don't get it," I said. "This was never about money. It was about doing the right thing." The Denver Business Journal broke the story first. Marketing giant Brightline strategies under investigation for systematic fraud. The article, meticulously researched, featured interviews with 12 former clients who discovered discrepancies in their metrics. My name appeared only once, as the whistleblower who'd tried to warn them. Gregory called an all-hands emergency meeting that morning. Sarah texted me live updates from inside the conference room. He's unraveling, blaming everyone but himself. Just fired Marcus in front of the entire company for disloyalty. Half the room is recording on their phones. By noon, those recordings were on social media. Gregory, red-faced and shouting, claiming a conspiracy against him. Gregory threatening legal action against anyone who spoke to the press. Gregory admitting, in a moment of rage, that everyone inflates numbers, we just did it better. That admission was his death blow. Patricia Stern from Meridian Tech held her own press conference that afternoon. Standing beside her legal team, she announced Meridian was pursuing criminal fraud charges against Brightline and Gregory Hale personally. The evidence they'd gathered, she said, showed deliberate falsification of data resulting in millions in misdirected marketing spend. "We trusted them with our growth strategy," she said, her voice steady but cold. "They betrayed that trust for profit." Other clients followed within hours. Lawsuits piled up. The Colorado Attorney General announced an investigation. Brightline's board called an emergency session that evening. I watched it all unfold from my small office at the co-working space, surrounded by my tiny team. We didn't celebrate. There was nothing joyful about watching people lose their jobs, even if they'd stood by while Gregory destroyed others. But there was a grim satisfaction in seeing the truth finally matter. The next morning, I attended a new client pitch for a tech startup. Midway through my presentation, the founder interrupted. "Aren't you the woman who exposed Brightline?" My stomach clenched. "Yes." "Good. When can you start?" That afternoon, something unexpected happened. Brightline employees began reaching out, not with anger, but with resumes. Account managers, designers, analysts who'd been trapped in Gregory's toxic system, finally free to leave. I couldn't hire them all, but I remembered each name. Some went to other agencies, spreading the story of Brightline's collapse throughout Denver's marketing community. The culminating moment came during a media ethics summit downtown. I hadn't planned to attend, but the organizer called personally. "We want you to share your story. Not about revenge or vindication, but about the cost of honesty in business. The hotel ballroom was packed. 300 marketing professionals, journalists, business owners. I stood at the podium where Gregory had stood just a year earlier, accepting an Innovation in Marketing award. 8 months ago, I was fired for refusing to lie. I began. I lost my income, my reputation, my stability. But I gained something more valuable, the ability to look at myself in the mirror. I talked about the real cost of corporate dishonesty, not just the lawsuits or lost clients, but the erosion of trust that poisoned entire industries. The young professionals who learned that lying was necessary for success, the clients who became cynical about every metric they received. Brightline isn't unique, I said. They're just the one that got caught. How many of you have inflated numbers, promised impossible results, stayed silent when you knew the data was wrong? The room was uncomfortably quiet. Halfway through my talk, the back door opened, Gregory walked in. The room tensed, phones appearing to record whatever confrontation was coming. He looked smaller somehow, his expensive suit replaced with jeans and a simple button-down. The confidence that had once filled rooms had evaporated. He didn't interrupt. He stood against the back wall, arms crossed, listening as I detailed not just his crimes, but the system that enabled them. When I finished, the applause was subdued, thoughtful, rather than celebratory. During the Q&A, someone asked about Gregory specifically. He's facing multiple lawsuits and criminal charges, I said. But he's also a symptom of a larger disease. Until we address the culture that rewards deception over results, there will always be another Gregory Hale. As the session ended, Gregory approached the stage. Security moved forward, but I waved them off. You destroyed me, he said quietly. No. Gregory, you destroyed yourself the moment you chose lies over truth. I just stopped enabling it. I made you, he spat. You were nothing before me. You're right, I admitted. You taught me everything, including exactly what kind of person I never want to be. He left without another word. The next week, news broke that the Brightline board had voted to dissolve the company entirely rather than attempt to salvage its poisoned reputation. Gregory filed for personal bankruptcy within a month, his assets frozen pending multiple lawsuits. True, North, meanwhile, had grown to 12 employees and 40 clients. We moved into a real office, nothing fancy, just a converted warehouse space in Rhino, but it was ours. On the wall behind reception, we mounted our mission statement in simple black letters. Truth is our competitive advantage. Every Monday, I held an ethics review where any employee could raise concerns about client requests or internal practices without fear of retaliation. We turned down lucrative contracts when clients pushed for misleading metrics. We grew slower than we could have, but every client we had trusted us completely. 1 year after Brightline's collapse, I stood in True North's conference room, a real one now, with actual walls and windows overlooking the Denver skyline. We were presenting to a Fortune 500 company that had reached out after their previous agency, ironically, had been caught inflating metrics. We're not the fastest, I told their executives. We're not the flashiest. But every number we show you will be real. Every strategy we propose will be honest about its limitations. And if something isn't working, we'll tell you immediately. Not hide it behind creative accounting. They signed a 2-year contract worth more than Brightline had ever paid me in salary. Gregory's trial made headlines for weeks. The prosecution presented evidence of systematic fraud spanning 8 years, affecting over 60 clients. Former employees testified about the culture of deception, the pressure to falsify data, the threats against those who questioned methods. He was convicted on multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy, receiving 5 years in federal prison and millions in restitution orders he'd never be able to pay. I testified too, not with vengeance, but with sadness. The man who'd taught me about business had ultimately taught me its darkest lessons. When asked if I felt vindicated, I said no. There are no winners here. Clients lost money, employees lost jobs, and an entire industry lost trust. I just hope we can rebuild better. Sarah now works at True North as our Director of Client Relations. Marcus, the former CFO who'd been Gregory's reluctant accomplice, served 6 months and now speaks at business schools about corporate ethics. Even Carl, the security guard who'd escorted me out, found work at our building. I made sure of it. My parents visited the office last month. My mother, her hands still bearing scars from the meatpacking plant, touched the nameplate on my door with something like awe. "You did it, baby. You made it out." "We made it out, Mom." But success feels different than I imagined. It's not the corner office or the growing bank account. It's the emails from young marketers saying True North inspired them to push back against dishonest practices. It's clients calling to thank us for catching problems early rather than hiding them. It's sleeping peacefully, knowing I've built something clean. The industry has changed too. Slowly, but noticeably. Verified metrics became a selling point. Clients began demanding raw data access. Several agencies adopted transparency pledges. The Bright Line scandal became a cautionary tale taught in business schools. Not everyone learned the lesson. Last week, I got a call from a potential client wanting us to massage their user engagement stats for an investor presentation. "Everyone does it," they insisted. "Just make the numbers tell a better story." "Stories should be true," I replied. "Otherwise, they're just lies with better narrative structure." They hung up. We didn't need their business anyway. True North now employs 38 people across 3 cities. We're not the biggest agency, but we're known as the honest one. Every contract includes a transparency clause giving clients full access to all data and methodologies. Our margins are thinner than industry standard because we refuse to mark up media buys in hidden ways. But our client retention rate is 94%. Sometimes I drive past Brightline's old building. The 23rd floor houses a law firm now. The gleaming lobby where Gregory held his damage control press conference is just another corporate entrance. It's as if Brightline never existed, except in the lessons it left behind. I got a letter from Gregory last month, forwarded through his lawyer. A single paragraph. "You were right about the truth. I was wrong about everything else. I spent so long building castles on sand that I forgot what solid ground felt like. Don't make my other mistake. Don't let righteousness become its own kind of blindness." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Today, as I write this from my actual office, not a dining table or coffee shop corner, I think about that morning I was escorted out of Brightline, carrying my pathetic box of belongings. I thought it was the end of everything I'd worked for. It was. But it was also the beginning of everything I was meant to build. The truth didn't just set me free, it gave me the power to free others from the lies they'd been sold. Gregory was right about one thing all those years ago. I did have a hunger that came from knowing what it's like to have nothing. He just never understood that the hunger wasn't for success at any cost. It was for success I could live with. My computer pings with a new client inquiry. Another company tired of being lied to, looking for an agency they can trust. I smile and begin typing my response, the same way I start every new relationship. "Thank you for reaching out. Before we discuss what we can do for you, let me be honest about what we can't." Because in the end, that honesty, the very thing that got me fired, became my greatest weapon. It destroyed an empire built on deception and helped build something better in its place. I never expected the truth to be easy, but it made me free. And it took everything from the man who thought himself untouchable. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious to know where in the world you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever stood up for the truth, even when it cost you everything? I'd love to hear your experiences.